Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We're about to get started, so if we can just silence our cell phones and close the side doors, if you would be kind enough, whoever's closest, I greatly appreciate it. Okay, good afternoon. We are on the record. Today is Tuesday, the 10th day of June in the year 2024. This is a budget hearing for revenues and unclassified items with the Jersey City Municipal Council. We had a scheduled 2 p.m. start. And the clock on our cell phone, my cell phone, is showing 2:20 p.m. We had an emergency wedding that we had to make sure that we had that done. May we have a roll call for the commencement of this budget hearing? Councilperson Prinzary.
Here.
Councilperson Saleh. Councilperson Solomon. And Council President Waterman. So we have 4 council members in attendance at 2:20 p.m. And just a reminder, we do not need a quorum for the budget hearing. In addition, at its time of its preparation, the notice of this meeting was similarly disseminated on Friday, May 24th, 2024 at 6:16 p.m. And a reminder was sent out on Friday, June 7th, 2024 at 4:37 p.m. to the mayor, municipal council, business administrator, corporation council, local newspapers, so I can certify as to our total compliance with the Sunshine Law. And I see Councilperson Baggiano arriving. We'll mark him at 2:22 p.m. So we now have 5 council members and Council Member Ridley at same time, 2:22. So we now have 6 council members present at 2:22 p.m. Council President, I'm going to turn it over to you. Still not on.
Good afternoon. Okay.
All right.
Oh,
Yeah.
testing.
Good afternoon. So Director, we'll turn it over to you and you
Yep.
can follow your presentation and we'll ask questions.
Good afternoon, members of the Municipal Council. This is the Department of Finance's presentation on, closer? Can't hear me? On the 2024 municipal budget. Additionally, Council President, we do want to talk about the capital budget
Yeah.
today. So if council members did have
Yeah.
questions today, just, once we go through the presentation, so we'll go through the presentation, answer any questions that you may have about last year's performance, this year's financial position, city's financial position, and then wrap up with capital discussions.
You have a paper copy of the,
I'll give that. Councilman, I would just say, if you do have specific questions about the performance of specific departments, the Department of Finance isn't really equipped to talk about those details. But I would say, considering today that we have a caucus meeting, you have additional questions, we'll take some notes and help relay that information back. But really, today's discussion is about finance and the city's position, so on and so forth. So with me today, I have the Assistant Director Graves. Additionally, I have Wakidia Stanton, who is here with me today. She's actually our acting comptroller that's been recently appointed in the absence of the vacancy that I had in our position. We also have here with us today is Wilcox and Company, Stephen Wilcox and Matt Wilcox, who helped the Department of Finance help prepare some of the financial statements, budget, and other things that advised our department to get us where we're at here today. So I'll turn it over to Kyle so we can go into the details on the budget presentation.
Good afternoon. So we'll start on page 2 is just a 5-year overlook of the total budget and the total employee headcount. And the employee headcount accounts for open positions. You'll see this year comparative to last year is pretty steady workforce number. We currently have 90 vacancies, but 64% of our workforce is made up of public safety uniform.
Vacancies? How many vacancies? I can't hear.
In the city, for civilian vacancies, we have 90 open positions. 35 of those are new, 55 are carryover from prior year budget. But the main point was 64% of total staffing is the Department of Public Safety. And as we go through the slides, you'll see the summary of what the budget is made up of, and we'll start on the revenue side. So on your left-hand side of page 3 is breakdown of 2023 collections. As of December 31st, and what was reported in our annual financial statement, we collected 736 million. We were anticipating 730 million, and below that is the breakdown of what that consisted of. Our biggest driver, obviously, is tax revenue, where we actually did experience a shortfall due to county board judgments and other tax appeals. But overall, we did meet the anticipated budget revenue number to offset our expenses. And then on the right-hand side is what's being anticipated this year. And there's more detail as we go into the next few slides on what the local revenues are, what the state aid is, but it's a pretty flat budget on that aspect. Page 4 is a summary of our surplus and fund balance. So you'll see this year's budget, we're anticipating 38.3 million in cash surplus to fill budget gaps. And on the bottom of that chart, you'll see a 4-year outlook. I wanted to go back to year end of 2020, where we had 35 million in cash surplus, and then you obviously see the drop over the next 2 years that we used in the budget due to the pandemic, not realizing all of our revenues and some other 2-year impact items that we had. But we're on the rebound, and I just wanted to make sure that was clear to the council that we're heading back into the right direction, regenerating the surplus that we had in prior budgets. So if there's any questions on that.
Can you sort of break down what explained the increase in surplus and how it got there?
Yeah, so excess revenues, if you want, we can actually jump to the next few slides and we could go over those items on what that was made up of. So if you go to page 6, it is a summary of local revenues, which consist of courts, hotel tax, parking lot tax. We exceeded the anticipated amount in 23 by about $5 million. The biggest driver obviously was hotel tax and court fines, like I mentioned. So you'll see that breakdown of my largest collection amount all the way down to $50 in rebates that we received. I will say year to date, we are on pace to collect what we're anticipating. And obviously with the summer months, tourism is up. We do see increases in hotel tax. Court fines are starting to rebound. We're averaging right now between $900 and $1 million a month in court fines. So we should meet that 10.5 million in court fine, but we hope to see that number grow back to 15, 14 million like it was in 2019, 2020. Page 7, sorry. Summary of revenues is state aid and construction code fees. State aid pretty much is flat year to year. That is not something we have determination over. One increase there is for the municipal relief fund. That was a one-time appropriation made by the state in July of 23. And the reason it wasn't captured in the 23 budget is because of the timing of when we introduced. So we were allowed to anticipate that in this year's budget. There's no clear indication of if we'll get it again in 24 for next year, but we should know that when the state adopts their budget, usually in June or July. Construction code fees, there was a rebound as well. You see, we anticipated 8.6 million, we realized 10.3. So that is another factor into the cash surplus that we have. And as we expected, when building permits were being issued and work was being shut down, people weren't paying those permits until they started. So now that everything's back to normal, we're starting to see that rebound. And our year-to-date collection on that is about 4 million through the end of May. Page 8 is a summary of other items. So these are majority pilots and tax abatement revenue, in addition to the MUA franchise fee. I did make a note that 21 pilots did terminate or expire in 2023, and we do have 3.2 million expiring this year and 9 million expiring the following year. But what we are doing is we are outsourcing the audit of pilot agreements and billing to NW Financial. We're trying to get a better understanding of true-up billing. And you'll see last year, we anticipated 90, and we brought in over 100 million in true-up payments on top of the annual tax billing. So that is also attributed to the surplus. This year, we've already billed an additional 4 million in true-ups. So that $89 million that we're anticipating, we should surpass that, even though we do have some terminations and expirations. And obviously, the bigger increase is in the franchise fee for the MUA. Last year's agreement was 22 million. We are still receiving that 22 million. And the amended agreement includes 30 million for this, that the city received this year. And then next year will be 10 million on top of the 22 and the following year. And the rest of the items are either capital surplus or money due to the current fund that wasn't realized at year end, which we're allowed to anticipate in the budget. Otherwise, that money would be in our cash surplus. And if there's any questions on those particular items, we could take those now.
So is the franchise agreement, is that separate from the anticipated like surplus of, you said 38 million?
That's separate.
Okay, just want to clarify. Thank you.
Sure. So if I can just follow up, so we are using, I guess, the 30 million we got from the franchise fee.
Correct. Yep.
Just in the operating budget.
Yes.
Okay. And then the capital surplus, you say more what that is?
I mean, that.
That on? You gotta click it on. You gotta turn it on. Should see your green light. There you go. Much better.
That's from premiums received on debt issuances from the purchasers.
So people paid a premium to purchase our debt.
Correct.
So it's basically an extra one-time fee for that debt.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay. And if we didn't use it in this budget, it would just go into the surplus for.
Well, it's in capital surplus.
Right.
So it's in this budget to help offset the cost of debt service.
Sure. Okay. And the interfund, is that basically that's money that needs to be paid back into the
Current fund, right?
from capital or grants or.
I can tell you that.
I believe it's a combination.
Vendor clearing and the regular clearing account, I think, makes up most of it.
Okay. And then just for next year, right, it just, what are the thinking if we're using the $30 million franchise fee this year, and obviously it's only 10 next year, so that's a $20 million gap up front. You know, what are we thinking about for next year to cover that?
Well, we do know there are drop-offs in some of our deferred charges, debt service. There's a minor drop-off. So there are appropriation decreases. And, you know, obviously with the performance of this year's budget, we should regenerate the same surplus, if not more. And, you know, it's one piece of the pie, right? You know, we're pretty confident that we could supplement that 20 million with other new revenue items like land sales that we're in discussions on that we don't have in this year's budget. You know, and, you know, the continued trend of our local stuff and those regular items should, you know, offset based on what we're seeing now.
Thanks.
All right, so I will move on to page 9, which is the summary of the municipal tax levy and what we are responsible for collecting for the municipal budget and some of our trust funds. Obviously, we've already explained that there's a 1.93% increase on the municipal levy, which is going to equate to about $6 a month on the average tax bill on the average home of 475,000. And then the other municipal items are the library, which is directly offset with an appropriation. And then the open space and arts trust fund, that doesn't go through the budget, but we do collect that and put it in a dedicated reserve for those committees to use. Any questions on the tax levy? All right, then page 11. Page 10 is the levy cap calculation. It just explains if the city did need to raise the tax levy by another 18 million, as you see on the bottom right, we are legally allowed to do so. That we are not exercising that right because it would result in a major tax increase. And we feel the 2% is sufficient to cover operations. So that's just the calculation on what our legal limits are. Page 11 is a summary of appropriations. So we did already have budget hearings on the departmental budgets. So today is going to be on the unclassified items that pertain to citywide expenses like health insurance, your regular insurance fund, utilities, debt service, capital budget, all of those items. But this total here reflects everything. And you'll see we expended 743 million in 23. Our original anticipated appropriations were 730 million. We did adopt a emergency appropriation for 21 million and a special emergency appropriation for $10 million. So our total appropriations last year were $761 million. And we have 27 million reserved at year end for anything that hasn't been billed to the city yet or will lapse the surplus at the end of this calendar year. You'll see our biggest cost is salaries and wages and health insurance and pension. So a majority of our costs are personnel.
Said there's an emergency.
Yep, we adopted two separate emergency appropriations. One was a special emergency appropriation for $10 million for accumulated absences. So that is any severance paid out to civilian or uniformed employees. That amount is deferred out over 5 years. So there's a $2 million appropriation in this year's budget. The $21 million was just a standard emergency appropriation because it was for tax appeals and other general liabilities. We mainly used it for health insurance overruns.
It's like a rainy day fund you put to the side just.
Well,
Or
we funded what we needed to pay for the end of the year to avoid any additional over expenditures, any hits into fund balance.
Yeah, the piece of it that was for tax appeals was specific to judgments or settlements that had been made where the money needed to be refunded. The emergency gave the city the ability to do what we're in the process of doing, is going to the local finance board for $18.7 million, which includes that emergency and the temporary emergency that the council passed, I think in March for, I think it was about $11 million, also for tax appeal refunds. So we're packaging that 18.7 million and asking the state to allow the city to raise it over multiple years instead of having a 1-year impact on the budget.
So there is a resolution tonight authorizing the financing, and there is a second reading ordinance pending pertaining to that tax appeals. We did cover it in last caucus, but so we don't anticipate covering that again tonight at caucus. But if there's questions, I would say, we could be in attendance for that, or we could take them now. All right, so moving on to page 12. Again, this is an explanation of our limitations on appropriation increases. It's just a statute. Go to page 13 is the calculation. So we're $21 million under the appropriation cap. Same theory applies for the levy cap. We can budget this, but we are not because of the tax increase. Then on page 14 is a summary of the departments. Like I mentioned, we have already gone over with those directors. So if you have any questions pertaining to these budgets, you can send those to me. I'll coordinate with the budget team.
What I'm wondering is, can you guys send us the spreadsheets for each department? Because obviously when we saw them, we saw it was proposed this year. So what we haven't seen is what wasn't funded and what wasn't funded.
Okay, no problem. Yep, we'll do that.
Great, thank you.
I apologize. I thought that was done already.
No.
All right, I'll make sure that happens. Right, so on page 15 are the items that we intend to cover today. You'll see the top expense is health insurance cost. We're increasing that by $7 million. That's based on the projections from our actuary, Acrisure. This covers general health insurance claims, dental, optical, retirement, benefits, Medicare. So that's the pot that is in. And our total budget, I believe, is $140 million, but we do have employee contributions that offset some of that. But, you know, we keep continuing to see that cost rising year over year. And in some instances, like last year, the projection we had was short, declared the emergency, covered our liabilities, and, you know, back to square one with this year.
Is there any way we could like emphasize preventative health care or build like an employee, let's say fitness center or something with nearby gyms to incentivize people to go? Maybe something that would reduce the amount that they pay, like monthly, if they're able to like, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I see it in the corporate world all the time, and I'm just wondering why can't we do something and see if it bears fruit, you know, like in terms of making people's overall health and well-being better,
Right.
at least for public safety, you know.
Yeah, so
I don't know if that's something,
No.
just throwing an idea
It
out
is-
in the
it is.
universe. And
it's relevant. I brought it up before as well. I do know our health benefits team and the business administrator's office, they do meet with Horizon monthly to go over where we're at, entertain new ideas. One thing we do is we have the wellness coach that comes to all the buildings. And it's something I brought up as well. It's not something we can really authorize, but it is you're on the right track, and that is true. If you do these preventative things, it does decrease, you know, the cost. But
okay,
I would say send that to health benefits, see where they're at.
okay.
The next biggest item is insurance fund commission. See, the budget is pretty flat. Last year, we did have an overrun in the insurance fund where we had court-ordered settlements and judgments that had to be paid prior to year end. You know, they went over budget. They spent 24. We budgeted 17. We covered some with appropriation transfers, but ultimately we do have an overrun there, which is raised in this year's budget. Rest of the items are utilities, municipal rent. There is bank adjustment fees, small amounts, and minor increase for the ethical standards board, which is operating again. So that's why you see the increase there. And you'll see those emergency appropriations in that breakdown as well, 21 and 10 million. Deferred charges, over expenditure appropriations, like I alluded to, a big portion of that was the insurance fund. The majority of the rest of that is for public safety. There was a resolution presented to the council for appropriation transfers to cover these expenses. That resolution failed. So that is being raised in this year's budget. And the rest are findings in the AFS of other interfunds due from current and prior year bills that we have to pay.
Cal, can you give us, not now, unless you have it, the full breakdown of that 11 million? Is it all public safety over expenditures? Is it some other things built into that?
I don't have the breakdown in here, but I believe it's in the AFS.
Okay.
It's in the reports, the budget reports within the AFS. You'll see the adopted amounts and charge amounts, but I'll pull that data and share it with you. But about 50% of that is public safety, 50% insurance. Obviously, like I said, there may be some other things in there that small amounts.
Okay.
All right. So the next group of items are statutory expenditures, our pension obligations, PFRS, police and fire, ERS, which is the city's pension fund, PERS is for employees still in the state pension, and then non-contributory pension, 118,000. Social Security, which is charged biweekly. We have unemployment insurance, which we do have to increase because we feel like it's a good opportunity to fund a little bit of a reserve for unemployment, because year to year, it always comes in a little bit over and we have to transfer money. So we're just trying to build a little cushion there. And then contribution retirement program. Any questions on statutory expenditures? Page 16 are some other items. Like I mentioned earlier, the maintenance of the public library, that's directly offset via tax collection. We do have a $3 million appropriation for tax appeal settlements. As of today, those funds are available. This is for any pending litigation that we get the rest of the year. This year, I believe it was 8 million that we have spent. And that's part of the financing that was presented to council. So we don't have to budget that, assuming everything goes well with the local finance board. Tax overpayment and interest, that's for current year tax overpayments. Outside of tax appeal settlements, it's a pretty standard appropriation year to year. And then state of emergency overtime, there's $1 million appropriation. The Jersey City Supervisors Union had an $850,000 settlement this year for prior year state of emergency that wasn't paid out. I believe each employee received $5,000. And then the rest of that was a declared emergency from March. Any questions?
For the 3 million for the tax appeals, right now, what's our anticipation of how much we are going to have to pay out in tax appeals?
So our audit division gave us an estimate for 12 million for the year. We've already spent 8. So, and this is, the last piece of the budget that we want to fill in to its capacity without exceeding that 2% amount. So we're at 3 million the rest of the year.
So just so as I understand it, if we're anticipating 12,
Yeah.
we already spent 8, we're adding 3. So basically, we're putting in 11 at this point. So we right now we might have 1 million, or at least anticipation, potentially 1 million more. Am I adding those numbers right?
Yeah, and obviously when things are settled later into the year, they can be deferred out.
Right.
We typically have 90 days to pay. So
Okay.
we know anything settled in October, we can either pay in this year's budget if we have sufficient funding, or we will delay it till January or structure it in a way where there's installments rather than one lump sum payment made.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay. And the last sheet of this presentation is the reserve for uncollected taxes. I feel like it's important to share because that number did double from last year. And that's, mainly attributed to the county board judgments. So every year we make an appropriation based on prior year collections. And as collections drop, the appropriation increases. So there was 20 million in county board judgments that we didn't realize in the fourth quarter. Those are, I believe, direct credits to the taxpayers. And that ultimately drove this number up in the budget. We did have a tax sale where we did collect everything that we could, but $20 million, you're seeing the hit right here. Any questions on that? Nope. That's the end of the summary. That's the end of summary for the budget. I didn't yet go over the capital budget. There is a $3 million appropriation for down payments on capital improvements. That's authorizing the financing of $57 million in bonds or notes. So $60 million in total for projects. I want to emphasize the importance of that because we've structured our capital plan over the last few years where we're funding smaller projects on 2 to 3 year increments. And it's important that we continue to stick to that plan because if the capital funding isn't available, we would have to ultimately amend our budget to include some of those expenses or continue Otherwise, projects may stall, come to a stop, or, whatever it may be. But the 3 million covers. Does everyone have the breakdown, the memo for capital program? Great. Yeah, so if you see on the second page, I broke down, kind of what departments it's going to at a high level. What we do is, unless we have a very, very specific project in which we are funding, we like to keep the funding allocated for general purposes like general building improvements. So it gives us wiggle room to cover City Hall, Pershing Field, libraries, things like that. So if we did have that detail, we included it. If not, you'll see under building improvements, there's 2.3 for other city-owned buildings. But all of that funding will be, that 7 million will be lumped together for all buildings. That's just our internal plans on how we're going to spend the money. Any questions on how that funding is going to be spent, or there's a project that you're looking to see the status on, we could look into that for you or confirm if it's included in this plan.
I'm working with Councilman Boggiano on a dog run and turfing up the field in Pershing Field. It's something that, it would need the same drainage system, so it has to be done at the same time. I was wondering if that is part of this plan.
So if you look into the budget summary, there is a section for park improvements. And as of last week, Friday, we had 13.8 million available for park improvements. So you'll see the highest budget right there is 3.5 for general parks. That funding can be used for anything in the city. I would recommend coordinating with Director of Recreation and Parks, seeing on their plans on for that funding specifically. We are adding $1 million this year for park improvements, mainly for resurfacing, playground improvements, things like that. But there is adequate funding to cover these projects that you're mentioning.
Okay, so if we have a Monticello court that they've been working on for a number of years, we've had some issues with PSE&G. They're finally ready to approve the lighting. So if we've already requested this, is it safe to assume that it is budgeted into this general allocation, or can we get a list of what has already been proposed so we understand how much, like what this dollar amount means?
Yep. Because
$2 million is, goes very, very quickly when it comes to park improvements.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, like I said, there is 13, almost 14 million available from other projects, and you'll see the detail there of some of those. And I know Lucinda is looking into her inventory to seeing what she can repurpose for new projects, because some of these may have been completed. But yeah, I could get you a breakdown of
Because
what
we
the
have,
intended
we
use
have
was.
multiple projects that have received different buckets of funding.
Yep.
And some of them need a little bit more to get past the finish line for, like, I'll use Pavonia Marion is one, Monticello Courts is another. The dog run that you guys are talking about is just, we just, because there are also parks that had improvements and upgrades and renovations done. They also receive open space trust fund dollars for them, and some of them have still not come to completion. So I just want to make sure that I understand moving money around year over year, you have to do that, but things that have already been allocated that were not completed in prior cycles, just want to make sure that they're on deck. And that the 13 million, no offense, but it's not going to all go to the City Hall Park project.
So we got the
Another
request
part of
from
the city.
So overall, we got like a $300 million request from all departments citywide. And then when we broke it down, what was needed immediately, this is what we parsed out from the departments. Give us a 2-3 year plan in continuation of your projects. Timeline requests and the things that you're asking for, we need to get that from the departments. So we do plan to have like a mid-year review with our departments to find out the status of other things, and we can provide that in like our reporting back to you in regards to when you're funding projects. If something happens, one project that's delayed, well then what's in the up next, right? In regards to prioritization, I think that's kind of sort of missing here as we collected the requests. Okay,
thank
you.
I just want to ask, what is this City Hall Park? Are you talking about the front of the building? That's considered a park?
That was the 22 ordinance. The original plans were to redo outside of City Hall. I don't know where they're at with those plans, but that was pretty recent. So,
That's the front of the building, right?
as surrounding City Hall, there were plans to redevelop way it looked, but
You're not talking about the back of the building, taking away the parking spaces.
I don't take away any parking spaces.
Oh, well, you better not. And then I have another question. You said before, as you know, and most homeowners want to know, we're raising the taxes 2%. Where the heck is the money from all these buildings in Jersey City? Why we keep on borrowing from the MUA? They raised our water rates 7%. People in this city have had it. With all this development, Journal Square, downtown, where's the money? What the heck is going on? We borrowed, what, 50 million from the MUA, and now they're raising our water taxes 7%?
Councilman, we can't speak on to the MUA, but I can speak to your point about all these buildings. So last year we commenced, like Kyle said, an audit of our pilot and debated portfolio. It had been a while since someone had looked at that and reviewed it. We haven't had pilot abatement in many years. Then we had the impact of COVID. Now I'm working with NW to do phase 2 of what was missing over these prior years so we can get a better assessment and at least put a 5-year plan of what's coming, charging off, what's being terminated so that we have a better collection. I think that is a real analysis piece that we've missed and it happened. And so as soon as we have an outcome of that report, we will share it with the council, but it is a working document that we've been working on. You've seen it materialize in our true-up billing and some of the items that Kyle did speak to about, I think what page was it on the presentation? You have it as a reference.
Yeah, but the point is, all these buildings have been going up for years, and our taxes are going up, 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 and people have had it. And the city was in fiscal trouble this year. We had to borrow from the MUA. We had to keep on borrowing and borrowing. It's got to stop. And, you know, I'm a homeowner, and I've had it. And I see half my neighborhood moving out, and they're getting out of here. People are just disgusted with what's going on. Something has to be done fiscally.
Councilman, we didn't borrow from the MUA. We amended our franchise agreement that should have been done in other prior years. And we looked at the impact of what happened in COVID with the MUA of not paying us over an area of time. And so in consolidation with our financial advisors, budget council, like try to put up a better plan and approach. Last year, the Department of Finance gave you guys a 5-year outlook of what it would be like, because oftentimes we were just rolling in year 1. We experienced it year 2, we experienced it. So we came in at 1.93. No one ever likes to increase taxes, but at this financial position and what we're getting out of, and then what Kyle alluded to, we are recovering and we're rebounding. We have a cash surplus of like $38 million back to the year end of beginning of 2020. So while I am very sympathetic about increasing things, today's discussion is about the city's financial position and where we're at.
Look, I see them spending money on bike lanes and all the stuff around the city. Got to stop it. You're the budget department. It's got to stop. The taxes should be being lowered. And
well, I would ask that you pass
should have been at the
transfers
meetings
end of
all
the year and not
weekend.
make us
Yeah.
include it and raise it in our deferred charges as well.
Something has to be done because it's gotten out of hand.
Uh,
I'm tired of listening to people.
I was gonna ask, I mean, I know the Board of Ed was able to not increase taxes because of the growth this year. You know, in prior years, they had raised taxes, you know, to the levels that, you know, are upsetting a lot of residents. But because of the growth of the city that we have been able to, they were able to stave off a tax increase this year. My question is, absent, let's say, a franchise agreement, absent the $38 million surplus that we have, is that like how much would we have to increase taxes in order to make up that gulf?
A lot.
Like, are we talking double digit tax increases? Are we talking like what, give me a like ballpark figure as to what the alternative is?
I mean, quite, Kyle, what would another $60 million be on the
In
tax
tax.
levy to the average homeowner?
Yeah, you'd be looking at over like a 10% tax increase.
Yeah, I mean, I think to put some context to this conversation,
Yeah,
I do a lot of this work across the northern part of the state. And 1.93% is abnormal based on what I've seen in other municipalities and counties throughout the northern part of the state. The rateable increase and the continued, and I went through this in Edgewater about 15 years ago when they started redeveloping the riverside of River Road. And the same questions from, again, longtime residents is all this stuff's going on. Why are taxes still going up? And the simple reason, at least for today, is taxes are never going down. Not when health benefits are going up 20% a year. Now you're self-insured, so you get a little bit of a break year by year depending on what the claims are. Salaries are not going down. We had a 2% cap on contract awards for 3 years, and then the legislature and the governor and everybody else said, I'm not renewing that. Let it sunshine. So now those contract awards are greater than 2%, and that goes for the teachers as well. Nothing's going down. The inflationary impact over the last year, 18 months on every government, on everybody, on all of us, on you, on me, on him, it's troublesome. But the increase in ratables helps buy down what that tax increase is to the average resident.
Well, how come then these problems aren't in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Virginia, Delaware? And it's like only New York and New Jersey that is screwed up. And that doesn't make any sense because go down to North Carolina, you could buy $1 million home, you pay $3,000 in property taxes. Come on. And their population is bigger than the state of New Jersey. Of course, they have one school system, they have one county thing. It's a joke up here. And I'll tell you something, I got my back broken this weekend. I was at 2 affairs this weekend because of things going on in the city, and people were after me and I had nothing to do with it. And people are tired of it. The taxes got to go down. You got to stop people from moving out, and it's got to stop.
Again, the budget's 65% or more personnel, pension, health benefits. So unless you have a market reduction in the workforce, nothing's going down.
most people usually go into the government sector for job security. Let's just be honest.
And again, I'm a little older than
There's more job security.
and some of you. And it used to be you got a government job, the salary wasn't great, but the pension and benefits were top notch.
Absolutely.
Things have evolved in the last 25 or 30 years, where a lot of the government jobs now are commensurate with corporate jobs in terms of salary. And that's by virtue of it costs money to attract qualified people. So again, I hear this. I understand the frustration of residents. I live in it. I live in Wayne. I'm a taxpayer. My taxes go up every year. Unless you cut services, unless you cut personnel, unless you cut, your taxes they're never going down. And the ratables and the other revenues help buy that increase down to $6 a month.
Didn't you say in the beginning of this presentation, what, 65% of the money goes to public safety? Like
65% of the head count.
head count, okay.
But over 60, almost 65% of the budget is total salaries,
Total.
health benefits, pension costs. and all the other ancillary things that go into having employees.
Well, why do we have, go down to Charlotte, North Carolina, one town, one fire department, one police department. Come up here, we have 12 different towns here, 12 police chiefs, 12 fire chiefs, 12 public safety directors. It's got to stop.
I don't disagree with your analysis, but this is the system that's here. And I've been around a long time. I've been involved in discussions about closing firehouses and regionalizing police. And they never go or end up in a positive nature. Because at the end of the day, the public wants what they have. I mean, not necessarily want to pay for it at the level they're paying for it, but the public wants. If the firehouse is here, they want to know the firehouse is here. And, I've gotten involved with discussions that they didn't want to regionalize the police department because the uniform colors and the car colors were going to be different. Just some context based on being an old man.
Even Hoboken shot it down recently. There were like talks to like merge the fire departments and they shot it down. I mean, there's 590 districts or towns, municipalities in New Jersey, and each one's got their own functioning government, fire department, police, XYZ. If you want to know why taxes are so high, it's because everyone wants what they want and they don't want to work together.
I'll give you a perfect example. There's a couple of towns in Bergen County. They still have backyard garbage pick. Garbage men get off the truck, go to every single house, go around the back, pick up the pails, dump them, and bring them back. Plus 2 or 3 times what normal garbage pickup would be. And when you raise the issue, well, you could save $500, $600, $1 million. They'll look at you like, whoa, we don't want garbage pails in the street. But again, that's the level where this comes down to in certain areas. So.
Here, they pick up the garbage cans and then they fling them across the street.
Question in
on that,
regards to the building improvements. Do we, for public safety buildings, what are the difference? Like, it seems like some things are listed twice, and I don't know if that's accurate or not, but what's the difference between, for example, like North Precinct and North District?
They were just different ordinances where the funding came from.
Okay.
However, they were named, obviously, just some minor discrepancy, but yeah, you'll see the ordinance number in front of the count description.
Okay.
So just on the capital budget, couple questions. One is, just where's the sort of money that is going to go to kind of the Pershing Field ice rink work?
Yeah, so that would be a part of our current year building improvements. We have, I believe, let me go back to, we have overall 19 million for building improvements. 7.3 of that will be for City Hall and other buildings. Right now, we're intending 2.3 for outside of City Hall, but there should be some surplus year end once we wrap up what we're doing here with the tile work and everything like that and cover labor. That funding can be shifted around for buildings like Pershing Field.
Okay, but I just want to be clear. So the 2.3 that's listed here could be a little bit more, but because obviously it says here for other city-owned buildings and contingencies.
Yep.
Is that for 5 other things, or is it for kind of Pershing Field ice rink?
Well, for what we know now is City Hall, Pershing Field definitively. As other things come up and may require short-term funding, we could use that for those projects. But ultimately, those are the 2 priorities.
Okay. I think, I've talked to team and BA, but I think it'd be nice to have a little bit more certainty on it. Just given that obviously we know that the solution we're working on now is a temporary fix, which is great, but it's we don't want to 2 or 3 years from now be in the same position we're in today with the rink. So we obviously want to be able to start the planning kind of immediately for what the long-term repairs are going to take.
Right. So obviously, if we adopt the first reading and we want to make amendments to the purpose of the funds to ensure X amount is dedicated to one project, I believe we could do that prior to the second reading.
Sure.
As long as it's within like
Yeah.
the same general purpose.
On the $5.5 million for traffic signals, there's two locations for stoplights that I've kind of gotten requested a ton of. And, my general understanding is this traffic signal contract kind of covers the general maintenance as opposed to new construction of a traffic light. So I wanted to kind of ask about the opportunity to add in, my understanding is they cost about $500,000. And I don't know if other council members have them too, but one or two of these traffic lights that have been priorities,
Okay.
kind of the funding rolling.
Yeah, so what I would recommend is, I wouldn't want to increase what we're borrowing now because it would impact the down payment requirement and a budget amendment. And I think the best approach there is we could look back at what infrastructure has in reserve. I know they have a decent amount of funding for those types of improvements. Yeah, they still have about 7 million from prior ordinances where we might be able to knock out those.
Sure, I'm happy
Right.
to have the conversation on that front, although what I would say would be, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if we increase this ordinance by, 1 to 2 million, the down payment is what?
5%.
5%, so it'd be a couple $100,000
Yeah.
this year's budget, which I think we could probably find, right?
Yeah, it would just delay the process a little more. So
Sure, but I don't know when we were intending on introducing the amendment, but,
well, let's see. We're gonna see what the state comes back first.
sure.
They may require some amendments,
Okay,
and we'll go through that process with the council. But if there's other requests for amendments, obviously
yeah.
you could send them to us,
And the other-
weigh it, and
the
see
other-
what we could do.
The other thing I'd like to get funded, which could either be capital or operating, and I think it's probably a citywide issue, but, I think we hear about trash complaints all the time, right? That we just get, trash, right? Trash is a major issue in the city. And I think there's a couple different ways to address it, but one simple way is the city purchases the recycling bins for pickup, but it doesn't purchase them with tops. And I have now done research that shows that actually increases the amount of trash on our streets, and that by capping them, having to have some form of a cover. So I'd like for the city to be able to purchase the recycling bins with the tops, so that we can give them out instead of the ones without the tops, or just purchase tops to add them to the ones we have. I'm open, but I think that will start the process of addressing the trash issue we're having in the city.
Okay.
And we're not gonna get, enough for every household in this city, but if we start that process now and we see that it's gonna, hopefully it'll work, and start the reduction of trash over time.
Okay, I'll see if that could fit into the current budget for sustainability,
Sure.
or if we need to tack on the DPW.
Thank
And
you.
if you are going to do that, I would not recommend getting tops. I would just recommend getting whole new bins because we all know our tops end up in the
Yes.
recycling
Right.
when they dump it.
Yep.
They either throw it off and play Frisbee or it goes into the truck.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do it, that would, I'm just saying that would be a waste of money.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, any amendments are going to be proposed for the council to decide on,
Right.
and we'll
Yeah,
have
and
a
we can-
conversation.
Yeah, we can do different things, but just something with it's gotta have covers.
I know council,
So wait, you want covers, Madam Councilman, do you want covers too or no covers?
But I think.
I don't know.
that-
Getting-
The
we have a
conversation.
Separate conversation. We
Right.
just had a meeting about trash this morning, so it's top of mind
I'm getting.
for me, but
confused.
we don't need to cover this here.
Any tops need to be attached to the can.
Yes.
Can we get the solar belly compactor?
No solar belly
Trash.
patches. That was a huge waste of grant funding after time. No, absolutely no.
We're not gonna
Okay.
agree.
Next.
so council members, I know that, this year's budget process, we started early. We got requests in a few months ago. We're now getting into phases of hoping to adopt it. If you have additional recommendations, things that we would discuss here, like Kyle and I took notes, we would want to see those kind of sort of amendments before adoption, because then we would assume we're taking it as is. And I would hate for you guys to get to the meeting and you're saying, well, we're adopting the budget, and you're like, we didn't propose things. So I know that we changed the format timeline. We're discussing the financials. We do plan on having meetings with the departments on mid-year performance and what we're going to realize, but just for clarification purposes, is how you sort out, some of the requests that you're asking us here today.
So what would be a general deadline for us to have top of mind for any proposed amendments?
Yes. So we have the public hearing on the budget Wednesday. We still haven't received comments from the state's budget examiner on what they need from us. So ideally, if we get that back within the next week from the state, we can prepare amendments and adoption for the next meeting. I checked in with our CFO today. I'll let you know on a better timeline, but I would say probably the July meeting, we're gonna look to adopt the latest.
Okay, because I know there was one instance where one of our divisions had a position that was open, but then it was cut, even though it was supposed to be refilled. So that stuff like that, that I would like to kind of take a look at.
Sometimes that's not always true. So I would say,
I'm not
It-
saying
yeah.
that it's true or not. I'm just saying
Yeah.
if this is a proposed amendment, I would like to make, should it be true, when would you like to have that information? That's my question.
I would like to have it by the end of this month,
Okay,
assuming we don't get
Right.
a better idea from the state on when they're gonna give us their comments. But if there are plans to amend and we can all agree that bring the budget back in the July meeting and it's not expected the next meeting in June, I'd say by the end of the month.
okay. And then that also goes back to the councilman's original request about what we saw at the end of last year, beginning of this year with the proposed and like what's going to come before us, just so we can clarify those questions that are coming to us.
Yeah, so end of June, if we could get proposed amendments. This way we have time to run it by the state. They have to approve. We're proposing again, and we also have to ensure that we don't hit any of those triggers for another public hearing on amendments.
Mhm.
But we'll work within all those confines.
What would trigger another public hearing? Is there a certain threshold or percentage?
Yeah, there's-
change?
10% of
10%?
an appropriation greater than 10%.
Yeah, there's three major ones. If we add a new item in, a new revenue item, I could get that to you.
Okay, just wanted to know.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions, council members?
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn at 3:17 PM by Councilperson Sil. Have a second? Second by Councilperson Renzeri. All in favor of the motion to adjourn at 3:17 PM. All council members present by acclamation, please say aye. We are out of here at 3:17 PM. Thank you so much, everyone present and everyone watching at home. Remember, teamwork makes the dream work, and the caucus will start at 4 PM. Thanks.